is only war.
What is up, gents? 40k Dirtbags here. We got another video for you guys today. We're going to go over pre-game questions you guys should be asking your opponent before you start the game. Before round one happens, before any dice are rolled, you should be asking these questions to make sure you're not getting gotcha'd when you're playing your game. So, thank you for clicking on the channel. If you guys are new to the channel, definitely hit subscribe so these videos actually pop up for you guys. If you guys are returning dirtbags, you guys are fucking awesome. Head over to Dirtbag Nation on Patreon. If you guys like the content, definitely support us over there. We definitely hit our goal of 250. We're already up to 290 per month for the Patreons. We want to get up to 500 so that way we can grow even more, get updated cameras, kind of fog, smoke machine, all that crazy shit like other channels have. And also Grandmasters, don't forget, you guys are first come, first serve when it comes to planning out videos to run on the channel, playing on TTS so we can get some like kind of ideas and strategies and stuff like that. And if you guys really want to get into the competitive scene, that's where my competitive dirtbags come into play. You guys can message me one-on-one in Discord. Don't forget to do that. Any questions whatsoever about the game, competitive wise, definitely ask me on Discord. That's kind of the whole goal of being a competitive dirtbag. So if you guys are new to the channel, we are ranked 1 for Chaos Space Marine player in the world for the Chaos Space Marine Army, as well as Grey Knights. We were ranked number 1 in the world last year for 2022 season. So just to give you a rundown on kind of how I am with the game of 40k, these questions are what I ask a lot until you really get to know the armies that you're playing. So just kind of tell you, we are in the competitive scene over here at the Dirtbags. We also are kind of casual. We do kind of like just the beer and pretzel type of game for 40k. If you guys ever watch any of my battle reports, it's never the same list twice. The only time I run the same list is if we're going to a GT and we have to practice for the GT going up to that. So with this video, this is going to be released on Patreons first. So if you guys are Patreons, you probably already saw this, but you're going to get first rundown on the Patreon. I'm going to list all my videos ahead of time on the Patreon. That's the kind of benefit of being a Patreon, as well as anything you purchase on Discord. It's 10% off just for being a Patreon. So let's get into the video. So pre-game questions is really what you should be asking. Let me make myself tiny so we're not taking up any space. And then let's go in. So first, over to the right here, most of these will be told while you're going over the list. When you guys each go over your list one-on-one, you're going to kind of tell them like, this is what my army is, this is, you know, what they can do, the stratagems I usually play with this unit is this, this guy's wound capped, stuff like that. So most of this is going to be already said, but this is really what you want to memorize and kind of get used to asking before you start the game, before the first turn happens, actually before you even deploy your army. You have to make sure you're putting your army in the right spot so that way you don't get screwed on turn 1, because actually half of the game is winning off of deployment. So if you get tabled by turn 1, that means your deployment wasn't really well or thought after, because maybe if you would ask these questions, it would have been better for you. So most of these are going to be going over the armies. And then also 10th edition standard strats. We actually have a strat video for the 10th edition. Everybody has those core strats. Some of the key ones to look out for are the ones where you can actually charge almost like heroic intervention. They change it to a heroic charge 6 inches away for anybody in your army. It's a 2 CP strat. So if they charge in and then you're within 6 inches, you can spend 2 CP to countercharge that unit. You don't get the charge bonus, but at least you get to kind of get into combat with that unit. So knowing those stratagems, definitely go check out that video. Knowing those stratagems are going to be key going into 10th edition. So first one, we're going to name at the top, and hopefully this is, yeah, so this works. This is Canva. I use Canva for all this stuff, so it's pretty cool. What secondaries does your army give up? Now, we don't know what the secondaries are going to be for 10th edition. We don't know if they're going to be similar to killing shit, assassinate, no prisoners, grind, any of that stuff. So your opponent should know how many points he gives up for no prisoners, how many assassinate points he has. So bring it down points. Those are the main ones you'd be looking for. Those are the easiest ones to go after. But what secondaries does your army give up? Those are the 3 main ones. Bring it down, assassinate, and no prisoners. Does he give up 12, 13 points for no prisoners? Does he give up 12 to 15 points for assassinate? I usually don't take a secondary unless they can get at least 12 points reliable for killing your opponent. So 12 is kind of the goal. 12 to 15, obviously. If they have five characters, but you're playing like sisters, they're never going to come out unless you know you're going to table the opponent. Some of them are a trap, but if you know that you're very confident going into that army, like, hey, I definitely can kill this army and I can definitely get to the characters, or vice versa, if their army wants to get their characters into combat, assassinate sometimes is a really good thing, because if they launch their characters out to come kill you, you're then going to kill them in return and get your assassinate points. So what secondaries does your army give up? Next one, pre-game move or redeploy. So when you're putting your army down, when you're deploying your army, hey, sir, do you have any redeploy? Hey, do you have any pregame moves? Because if they have a pregame move, let's say, oh, I pregame move 6 inches, like let's say Blades of Victory. So I pregame move 6 inches, great. What's your threat range? Oh, I can move 6 inches and then 12, and then I can charge. So 6, 12, 18 inches, you're 24 inches away. So basically you have a 6-inch charge turn 1 if you're on the line. Do you have any redeploy? Because if I put my whole army aiming to shoot this one guy on turn 1, and all of a sudden you redeploy him on the other side of the table, well, great, now I'm out of position. Kind of fucked up my deployment. So these two things are really good to ask your opponent before you start putting down your army on the opponent's table. Hey, do you have any pregame move? No. Hey, do you have any redeploy? No. Great. Set it up like normal. Next question. Your threat range is turn 1. This is kind of the same thing where what's your threat range turn 1? If somebody's like, oh, I threaten 12 inches, movement, well, great. Then you have to add the charge as well, because if they move 12 inches and then 12 for the charge, basically 24 inches, they shouldn't be able to get to you unless they're playing the circle mission in the center. So what are your threat ranges turn 1? Well, this guy can get picked up and redeployed anywhere on the table, like a deep strike, kind of like a Gate of Affinity. So really, I can see your whole army no matter what. That's how Grey Knight players are going to be talking to the opponent and be like, oh, I can shunt, I can redeploy, I can Gate of Affinity, I can do all the shit. So Grey Knights are going to be insane in 10th edition. But what are your threat ranges turn 1? Meaning, how far can you shoot? Like, oh, most of my guns are 24 inches. Great, I don't have to worry about too much. And also, how far can I charge you turn 1? So knowing those threat ranges are going to be huge. A great example is the Blood Angels Death Company. So they threaten, I think, 32 inches max on turn 1. So as long as you start your army 32 inches away from their front line, they're not going to be able to get to you. So most of my times, if you see any of my tournament videos, you might see me play against a Death Company Blood Angel player or the Khorne World Eaters. You might see me deploy my entire army on the back line. That way, if they have turn 1, they won't be able to get to me. If I have turn 1, I could just move up onto the objectives and do my secondaries and kind of wait for them. But if they have turn 1, they get the pregame move, and then they can charge me, and it's not a fun time. So making sure you know what their threat ranges is, turn 1 is going to be huge. What are the most gotcha tactics? That is kind of a really... It's friendly to tell people. I hate gotchas, honestly. If you guys ever watch my videos and like somebody pulls a gotcha on me, it is on. Like the rest of the game, we are fucking doing all gotchas, not telling you shit. Fuck you. I hate the gotcha game. But that's kind of what some people play like. But if you ask them ahead of time, then there's no gotchas. Well, sir, I told you ahead of time that I had this stratagem, and this is kind of what my goal was to do. You're right, you told me that, I just forgot. Then it's not really a gotcha. So if you tell people like, hey, what's your most gotcha tactics? Well, if you shoot this one unit, they then get to move up after you're done shooting at them, like the Khorne Berserkers. So if you shoot them, they can then move into combat with you, so then your unit can't really charge. That's a gotcha strat. The Chaos Space Marine consolidate 2 inches if you fall back. That's a gotcha strat. Fall back, shoot, and charge. That's not really, it's a good strat, but it's really good to tell your opponent ahead of time in the pregame stages, so that way when you're playing the game, you don't feel like a dick. So what are your most gotcha tactics that you usually do in the game? Because they'll tell you, because every single game, they usually do the same thing over and over. So they're going to tell you up front, like, oh, this guy can literally charge 20 inches away and then get a charge off on you. So like an orc warbike, something like that. So that's a really good question to ask, is what's your most gotcha tactics that you do every single game? Most used strats, same thing I just mentioned, where the Chaos Space Marine, my most used strats are the ones where I can fall back, shoot and charge with Black Legion. I can advance and charge with Bile. I can do -1 to hit for any of my Night Lords. I can make you not fall back for 2 CP for any of my Night Lords. Stuff like that. Like, those are the strats you want to be telling your opponent, because during the game, once you say it ahead of the game, you don't have to mention it ever again. Right, so that's kind of how you want to be playing in a tournament scene. If it's a friendly game, yeah, you want to be reminding your opponent all the time, because you're going to get the best game you can with a friendly game while you tell your guy what's going on. So if your opponent's about to fall back and you have that stratagem waiting for him to fall back, you're going to be like, hey, buddy, remember, I have this stratagem. And he's like, oh, yeah, thanks for that. You know, that's a friendly game. Competitive game, you told him that ahead of time, so you don't have to keep reminding them every single turn, because the whole goal is to win the GT, obviously. So most used strats that they do, that they use every single game, because if you get their tactics, you can kind of play around their tactics, all right? So that's definitely a good question to be asking. Any snipers, wound caps, phase caps, any way to get around my Abaddon phase cap or wound cap or whatever it may be. Do you have any weapons that ignore it? Do you have any guys that have wound caps? Do you have any snipers that can snipe out my Abaddon? Now in the new 10th edition, sniping and precision is going to be huge. It might be broken, the precision keyword. So if you can have an entire army that has just precision all over the place, they're not going to be able to hide their characters very well, if at all, especially the Vindicare Assassin. I can't wait to try him out. But do you have any snipers that can ignore basically Lookout Sir, the old edition? Do you have any precision? Do you have any wound caps? Do you have any ways to ignore wound caps? Stuff like that you want to be asking, so that way if you see a character on the other side of the table, you know that they have a wound cap and you can't really shoot them off the table. So little stuff like that is definitely good to know on what specific characters have what. Next, any way to increase charges. This is a big one, especially with World Eaters, because they have a 3-thing blood token that they can spend to get +1 to charges, or +1 to advance and charge, whatever it may be. But that means if they deep strike out of coming down on the table, they have an 8-inch charge, and then they can re-roll it, you know, for a CP. But that 8-inch charge is actually really fucking big, especially if you leave your backfield open. So if your characters are in the back and you leave a little gap, that the way they can put 3 8th-bound or Oathbound and then charge you with an 8-inch, and then you lose your characters, and then you're kind of fucked. That happened to me. It's definitely good to know. Do you have a 3d6 to charge? Do you have a way to do a psychic power and get additional charges off? Do you have a miracle dice that you can get an auto charge off? So these questions are going to be huge, because you need to know what their threat ranges are. Do they have almost like a guaranteed charge, kind of like Emperor's Children, where they had the something of the Prince, where they get to kind of advance and use one of the dice as a 6 automatically, so they have a minimum 7-inch charge? Death Guard, do you have ways to reduce my charges? Do you have -2 to charge strat? Do you have Custodes? They have the Tanglefoot, like shit like that you want to be asking. Do you have a way to increase your charge, and do you have a way to reduce my charge? I should add that in here. Do you have a way to reduce my shit? Tal has one as well. So there's a lot of competitive armies out there that can reduce charge ranges and also increase charge ranges. So do you have a way to increase or decrease my charge? Now, some of these you don't have to ask all in the beginning. I should probably state that up front. You don't have to ask all of these in the beginning. The main ones you want to ask in the beginning is really deployment stuff and redeploy stuff. And then all these other ones you could be like, hey, during the game, during setup, then you could start asking these questions like, hey, do you have any way to reduce my charge? If you're going into the charge phase, does anybody have a way to reduce anything? Stuff like that. You just want to get used to asking these questions every single time. Can you advance and charge? So that's another way where, can you increase your charges? Can you also advance and charge? Advance and charge gives you almost an extra 6-inch movement automatically, especially if it's bikes. Grey Knights now, we don't know if we can advance and charge. That would be so fucking cool if we can. But all of Grey Knights now have an auto 6 for advance. I think if they have the teleport keyword or deep strike, whatever it may be. They can all advance 6 inches automatically. So do you have a way that you can advance and charge afterwards? Because if you can advance, hey, cool, you have a better threat ranges of shooting if you have assault weapons. But can you advance and then charge afterwards? That is actually huge. So a lot of armies can advance and charge. We don't know so much in 10th edition coming up, but do you have a way that you can advance and charge? Just to kind of keep that in your mind, knowing that like, all right, this guy is advancing 6 inches or 20 inches that way. He can then charge after that. So I have to save my 1 CP for the Overwatch. All right, and then next, any fight last. There's going to be, I don't know how much fight last can be built into 10th edition. More like it's going to be, do you have any fight first? Yeah, so do you have any fight first? Because in 10th edition, if you fight first and you're the defender, you're going to be able to fight before any charges. So how the fight phase works now in 10th edition is when your opponent charges you, they have a charge bonus, meaning that they gain fight first. But if you also have a fight first ability, let's say Trajan, he then gains fight first once per game. You as a defender get to choose the first combat. So if there's anybody that can give fight first out on your opponent, you need to know that, because if you charge them, they're actually going to be able to fight you before you charge them. Pre-9th edition, you can actually charge and then you pick the first charge target before fight first procs on the opponent. Now it doesn't work that way. If I charge in and you have fight first on the unit that's charging, you get to fight me before I fight you, which is bonkers. So fight first is going to be huge coming into 10th edition. We don't know if there's going to be any fight last abilities, but if you have a fight last or a fight first, you definitely want to ask that for your opponent. Trajan is definitely going to be used a lot, and you're going to see him do that almost every single game. So heroic 6 inches. This kind of goes with the strat that we talked about with the heroic or pile-in 6 inches now. Do you have a way that you can extend that? Do you have a way that your characters have a heroic 6 inches? If your character is a part of a unit leading that unit, does that unit now have a heroic 6 inches? Most of the time the answer is going to be yes. With the stratagem, 2 CP strat, you can basically charge 6 inches. But does anybody have that built in? Does anybody have a way to do that for 0 CP? Does anybody have a way to do that as well as use that stratagem? So can I use, almost like Space Wolves, right? They can pile in 3 inches in 9th edition. They can pile in all of them at the same time. But do you have any ways to kind of do that multiple times? Do you have any way that your character can do that specifically? Those are the questions you want to be asking, especially like if you're charging and you see a character unit, what can that character unit, if I charge here? Then they have to tell you. So I'm going to charge this unit. That character unit is, within 6 inches. Can they do it for free? Shit like that you want to ask. Because if not, and they don't have 2 CP, they can't heroically charge into your unit. Spec Scan. So this is good for if you have a lot of deep strikes like Grey Knights. If you're going to be deep striking most of your army every single turn, you have to make sure your opponent doesn't have like an Spec Scan for free or a way to shoot them at full ballistic skill when they come down. Because if they do the Overwatch strat, they still hit you on 6s, which isn't going to be as powerful. But if they have an Allspec Scan where if they spend 2 CP, they can then shoot you at full ballistic skill, probably with full rerolls like Space Marines and all that shit. But do you have a way that you can Allspec Scan me, or a way that fucks up my deep strike? I guess that should be the keyword. Do you have a way to fuck up my deep strike? If they do, definitely trying to remember that throughout the game, because especially if you have a lot of people coming in from deep strike, you have to know that. Next one is going to be deep strikes and reserves. What units do you have? This is really pregame. They have to tell you what deep strike or what people are going in deep strikes, what people are in reserves. So that way they tell you, yes, I can basically pick these guys up on the table and put them anywhere on the table, kind of like our Grey Knights, as well as if I have the one little known people, Votan. Votan can then pick up that unit and then kind of put them anywhere on the table. Chaos Space Marines have the Veilbreaker plate. We don't know if any of this shit's going to stay around in 10th edition. But do you have a way that you can deep strike or reserve special, like come in different vectors, different ways? The walking armigers coming in turn 1 and shooting at everything walking on from reserves. And another thing to combat that is going to be coming in turn 1. Do you have a way to bring in your army turn 1? Do you have any drop pods that can come in turn 1? Do you have any way to spend 1 CP and come in 1 turn ahead of time? We don't know. I think you can deep strike turn 1 with the core stratagem, but once the tournament rules comes out, that's when we'll really know if we can come in turn 1 or not. If we can, that's going to be fucking insane. If we can't, no worries, it's going to be just like normal. But do you have a way to come in turn 1? All these things are going to be questions that you want to be kind of memorizing and starting to ask people every single time you play the game. It could be friendly games because you want to start getting used to asking people, or it could be competitive scene where you want to be asking these to make sure you don't get gotcha. The biggest thing is the gotchas. So what are your most gotcha tactics / stratagems you use the most? Do you have any pregame moves? Do you have any redeploys? What's your threat ranges turn 1? Those are the main ones I ask ahead of time before I start the game, or before I deploy my army, because deploying your army is so key, especially in these last 2 editions, because you don't want to die turn 1. If you lose half your army turn 1, it's all because of deployment. I actually have a deployment video, very honed in on how to deploy your army, where you want to deploy your army, and kind of tactics on how to do that. Go check that out. That's one of my previous videos. And again, if you guys have any questions about this, or there's anything that I missed, definitely leave them in the comments below. Help out your fellow dirtbags. And also, if you guys are interested, again, Discord, so that way you guys can suggest stuff. Again, Patreons, they get first dibs, first questions, first everything. I usually respond to a lot of Patreons, right away, especially the competitive guys. Competitive guys, you can email me directly, so that way we can go over tactics and ideas. I can answer your questions as soon as possible. Ask Frank. He literally asks me all the time, and I get to him like right away. And he's like, "Holy shit, I can't believe you responded so fast." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm literally right on my computer working from home, so I get to respond to you right away." So hopefully these kind of questions help you guys out. A lot more stuff like this is going to be coming up in 10th edition, if it's not already on the channel. So guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for clicking on the video. Leave a comment below, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you in another video soon.